daydreaming is probably the most important thing that an author can do. I have a theory that it's the most important thing that anybody can do. I was in China last year, and I was at the very first science fiction, fantasy kind of conference, convention thing that they'd held in China for many years. Things like science fiction and fantasy were very much frowned upon. And finally, they had this little conference, and thousands and thousands of people came. And I was talking to one of the writers there. I said, why now? Why the Chinese government? Why are they getting behind the idea of science fiction, of fantasy, of things that aren't? When until now they very much disapproved of it. I talked to these older science fiction writers, and they labored in obscurity, and they were not approved of culturally. And what I was told was that the Chinese had been rather worried about the fact that, on the one hand, they're incredibly good at building things and making things that people give them to make for them. But on the other hand, they don't innovate, and they don't come up with the things that they make. And they'd gone over to the US, and they'd been talking to people at Microsoft, and at Apple, at Google, and they'd started to realize that one of the things these people had in common was these people read science fiction and fantasy. These people had got into the habit, when young, of imagining things that didn't exist, of understanding that things didn't have to be the way they seem to be, or the way they are now, that they could be different. And so I gave a talk to some of these young Chinese writers, and they were saying, well, what is the most important thing we can do? And I said, you should daydream. And it was really very much as if I'd been at a monastery and been asked by monks, what would you recommend for us? And I said, you really have to go out and have a lot of sex. Judging by the expression on their faces, it was just so much the wrong thing to have said. Because these are people who have been told that daydreaming was wrong. And I love daydreaming. Daydreaming is where I get anything that I've ever written that was any good, probably started as a daydream. Boring theatre, really good. I recommend middle school drama. Preferably somewhere in the middle of a row, with enough light that you cannot actually sleep. You can sit there and watch. It's amazing the places your mind can go. In the case of the Graveyard book, I was sitting there in the sunshine, and I looked at my son, and I thought, it's really happy here. I thought, you could do something a lot like Kipling's The Jungle Book. That was a story about a kid whose family were killed, who wanders into the jungle, who's raised by jungle animals and taught the things that jungle animals do. And I thought, I could do that. I just set it in a graveyard. And it will be about some little kid whose family is killed, and they wander into a graveyard, and they get raised by dead people. And they get taught all the things that dead people know. And it was a revelation. And I was thrilled. And I thought, that's an idea, that's a proper idea. It has legs. It will make a great book. And I went up to my office that night, and I sat down, and I wrote a page and a half. And I looked at the page and a half that I'd written, and I thought, this idea is so much better than I am a writer. And I put it off put it aside. And every 4 or 5 years, I would come back to it. And I go, you know, that idea, that thing, the graveyard, that's a real thing. I will go back, I will try it again. So I would try it again. And I would look at it, and I go, that's not right. Not right. And I would write something else. And there was some weird kind of level on which, in the very, 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 very far distant back of my head, everything else I was writing was still just to be good enough to get to the graveyard book, which was the first idea for a book I'd ever had. And I wasn't ready to write it. And then somewhere about 2003, 2004, I thought, I'm not getting any better. That was apparently it. I'm now probably about as good as I'm going to get. I'm in my 40s. I've been writing for a living for over half my life, and this is it. I may as well start it. So every other time I try to start the book, I'd started it in the beginning, and that did not work because I did not get to the book. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll start in the middle. I have an idea for a structure. I know I want it to be a chapter every 2 years. And I know that it's going to, the first chapter is going to be coming to the graveyard, the last chapter will be leaving it, and I'll do the middle chapter. And Bod will be 8. So I started writing it. We were on holiday. I don't do holidays really well. Some people are holiday people. No. Mostly I think because A, I really enjoy what I do. I love writing. And B, I get bored. And I've never understood what people do on beaches. I know they're there. And you can take a book. Or you can write. So round about day 2 of going, I'm finished with, I'm on holiday, I sat down on a deck chair on a beach and put my hand up and started writing. And my daughter Maddie, who's my youngest, who is much better at beaches than I am at holidays, and have been doing sensible things like splashing around, came and sat next to me and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I've just started writing something. And she said, well, read it to me. Now, I just got up to the point at which previously I would have given up and thrown it away. I would have gone, yeah, this isn't working. But I had a little girl sitting next to me. She was about 10. She wanted to know what I'd read, so I read it to her. I read the first couple of pages of chapter 4, which is The Witch's Headstone. And when I got to the end of reading that section, she said, what happens next? And those 3 words, they're magic. Because suddenly you know somebody cares. And you have a reason for telling them. And you want to know as well. So instead of giving up, I carried on. And very soon I had a finished chapter. And then, fairly slowly, but over the next couple of years, I would write another chapter here, another chapter there, finally, this time starting at the beginning. But knowing a lot more and feeling a lot more comfortable. And eventually, last March, I finished the book. And I'm really happy. And I thought I would read you a little bit.